Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming along today and watching watching a webinar by PredictWind. Um, we're very lucky today to have one of our support team legends talking to us. Uh, um, I think on the invitation it said his name was Craig Smith. We call him Smilie. He's a very accomplished sailor, does boat deliveries, sailed around the world, raced around the world in the Volvo, and has, many, many miles of ocean racing, boat delivery, and just sailing on his own boat experience. So um, it's probably going to be a little bit different to the webinars that we normally do. Smiley's just going to talk about how he does things, and I think it'll be quite refreshing and very educational.
Thanks, Nick. Hopefully everyone can see me okay there. Thanks for the intro. Yeah, I'm part of the support team here at PredictWind. I guess I've been crossing oceans now for 45 years, so quite a long time. Either I'm a slow learner or I enjoy it. So I think I enjoy it. So let's sort of rip into it. So I'm going to assume you've all got, you've got a prepared boat. You've sort of finalized your crew, and I'm just going to work through how I sort of get into this. So basically, we need to do it. We need to look at the seasonality. That would be the first thing to be really looking at. So I'll dive into that first. So I'll go and just share my screen here. Yeah, I'm here. Right. So for me, basically, sort of 6 months out, potentially, you guys are potentially doing an Atlantic crossing later in the year, that sort of November to January period. You're probably first glance, you're going to be looking at our climate data. Okay, so the climate data, it's basically a digital pilot chart. Pilot charts have been around for a long time, as you probably all know, 200 years. Fantastic tool. What we're doing here is we're taking the ECMWF data, and it's a 10-year rolling average. Okay, so if I head to somewhere like let's head where we're going to go. Let's head to, we can hang in New Zealand. So basically, if I zoom the screen, I can sort of see all of these windroses here, right? So if I was planning a passage, Atlantic crossing, anything like that, I'd be using this first, okay? I'd be digging into this. Jimmy Cornell does a fantastic weather routing route booklet they do. That's a fantastic tool. This is very similar to that. I use this. You just want to get as much information you can on seasonality. Seasonality is just about those trades. It's about trying to keep out of that sort of, that cyclone belt, that those tropical storms developing. You want to be staying right out of that, right? So I'll be using this. I've ascertained when I want to do this passage. So sort of New Zealand to Fiji. We know we want to sort of go May up to Fiji or Tonga, all those different places, and we want to be out of there in November. Okay, we definitely want to be out of there 1 November, right? So from here, I've established a month. So here we want to go straight into departure planning. I should say, firstly, you need to understand the tools with PredictWind. So basically, I would be learning the tools. So basically, sail routing. We're going to head there. So with sail routing, it's a fantastic tool, but firstly, you need to set up your polars. Okay, so we'll just go into there first. So when we talk about polars, we're talking about how our boat performs. You probably already know this, but how your boat performs through different sort of wind conditions. So here we have predefined, sail, advanced, and AI polars. AI polars are with a data hub, which that is a refinement of your base polars over a period of time using the PredictWind data hub. Right now, I've got predefined. What I will say with predefined polars, if your boat's not on the list, you basically just choose a boat which is very similar to performance to yours, because you can always adjust that. I've got a Pedersen 46. It's not on the predefined list, but I use the Pedersen 44, and I basically use a polar speed adjustment. So here I've got predefined. That's Peterson 44. I've got upwind 80%, downwind 80%, and night 90%. The reason being, designers and boat builders are into selling boats. The polars are pretty much light ship. Okay, so they don't have 100 meters of chain. They don't have full water. They don't have full of provisioning or spares. So basically, your boat won't perform as well, right? So you've got these adjustments. So 80, I've got 80, 80, 90. You can see the polar curve out the side here. I've also got motoring set. So the routing will take into consideration at any point in time your motoring settings. And I have those at sort of economic revs. Basically, my boat will do 7 knots under motor. I tamper it back here. It's down at 6. But I want to sail, right? So I basically don't want this kicking in early. We don't have endless fuel. I have like 3 days motoring tops. So it's at 6 at 2 for me. Okay, you play around. You don't want to see this at 6 and 6. 6 and 2, I'm happy with that. Now I'm into the sail routing. By the way, I'm always doing fastest time. Right, here we are. Now you've set your polars up, and I'm still nowhere near leaving, right? What I want to do is basically run some routing just to see if the output looks reasonable, and I can drag my start and finish waypoint to anywhere. Okay, and I can run a route. Okay, just move these over here. I'll run a route. So all I'm doing is embedding what I think my settings are, and I want to go and have a look at those settings. So what we're doing here, guys, I've got my start and finish waypoint. It's sending that to the server, calculating the cloud, and it's calculating a route with all those different models that we have and my boat's performance. So it takes a while. Here we go. Righto. So I'm not too concerned. I'm just checking this out. So what I'll do here is I'll go, well, that looks good. I'll go straight into tables. I'll go straight into wind tables, and I'll have a look that the polars are right. So it's Peterson 44, upwind 80, downwind 80, motor at 6 and 2, right? Basically, then I'm just going to scroll down here, and I'm going to have a look at my, this is the PWG model. I'm looking at true wind speed, true wind direction. I'm looking at the true wind angle. Does my boat do 6 knots, 6.4 knots? Yes, it does. So I'm happy with that. I would scroll down here for different wind angles and just see if that looks reasonable. Okay, that's all I'm doing. And what I would do if it wasn't reasonable, I'd go back here and I would change this polar percentage and I would recast the routing. Okay, so that's pretty much stage 1. That's what you want to do, right? So just say now we're pretty happy with using PredictWind, the weather routing tool. How do I do this? So basically 10 days out from departure, right? I'm basically going to be having a look at the wind maps. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to be going to here. I'm going to be, which is the forecast option box. Okay, top right. So if you just follow me here, I'm on Auckland maps. I've come in here, I'm on the wind map, and I've got these forecast models. Okay. What I'll do is I'll go out to 100-kilometer resolution. Now, the reason I want to go out here is because all I'm doing 10 days out is having a good look at the big overall play, the synoptic position, right? I don't want to, I'm not really worried about the detail right now. So 10 days out, this is all I'm doing. The animated view is pretty cool. I don't like it. I enjoy having a look, either arrows or wind barbs, because then I'm seeing the contour lines, okay? And I'll just play this through. I just keep looking at this, okay? I just want to see the big picture. That's all I'm trying to do. Let's move these controls out of the way. We can play that through. What I will say is that you don't want to get caught up with model bias here. I would be having a look at all the models, having a good look at it. So PWE, be having a look at that. ECMWF. Now this far out, a little bit of model bias here for me, but ECMWF I feel does the better job long term. So when I talk long term, I'm talking out to those 10 days, that 10 days, that 5, 7, 5, 7, 10 days. Potentially ECMWF does a better job, but there's no reason why you shouldn't be looking at the GFS, looking at the SPIRE, looking at the UKMO. They're all there for a reason, right? If life was that simple, you could have one model, there'd be just one model sitting here. It's not as easy as that. But basically, I'll play that through and I'll just be having a look at those systems flowing through. I know from the general play, New Zealand to Fiji is that, it's a global thing. Systems are coming west to east. We have a big push through for Tasmania. I'm looking for that. I'm looking for anything establishing up here, up above Fiji. So that's what I do. Basically, looking at this stuff, right? From here, I'm then into the departure planning, right? So I might roll into the departure planning. We've got sail planning, we've got power planning. I'm going to be using sail planning. So what I'll be doing is here is I'll be running my route. So up here, I've got my route box. I've actually already got a few routes already pre-saved here. So I'm going to click Auckland to Fiji. You can see that. And then what I'll be doing is I'll just be running the sail planning here. So planning preferences. Basically, you choose 4 models. I happen to have PWE, PWG, ECMWF, and GFS. You can see that. All my settings when the weather routing are exactly the same. There's nothing to adjust there. You don't have to worry about that. So here I go. So basically, I've got them staggered 24 hours because I just want to have a look over 4 days. I'm going to be leaving, realistically, I can change this. No one's expecting you to leave in before sunrise. You definitely don't want to be leaving, after nightfall. But basically, let's do it from now. That's all cool. And let's go for it, right? So I'll just be running this.
Hey,
generally.
Smilie, can I get you to
Yep.
maximize your screen, the green on the top left? Just I
Oh,
can.
oh, sorry. Is that better?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Green at this, guys. But so I'll be running the departure planning, and it's a great tool. It's like an executive overview, and it pretty much will establish or not what sort of day to leave. Okay, so this is what this is going to be doing, is giving me those models I've chosen over those 4 days. So it'll give me an executive summary, and you can look at the pretty pictures, or you can get straight into the tables, right? So from here, once it calculates, I will say with your waypoints too, just make sure they're in clear open ocean. There's absolutely no point trying to weather out from the middle of Australia or the middle of the Midwest. Let's try and keep them in the water. And I don't get too carried away of refining the waypoints. The start and finish, like for Fiji, there I'll have it in clear open ocean. So here we go. We've got some output, right? So right now I am looking at how do I know what I'm looking at? I'm looking at the PWG route, right? And if I play that forward, let's move these zoom controls. And they're shifting in 24-hour increments, right? And this is a pretty picture, wonderful stuff. It's great. But for me personally, I'm straight into the tables. So realistically with the tables here, I can have basically a summary view of all those models that I've selected. It's giving me a departure 1, departure 2, departure 3, and departure 4. And it's giving me passage time, motoring time, maximum wind, minimum wind, average wind, max gust, max cape. So this for me is probably looking pretty ugly. I've got pretty high cape values here. That's the energy in the air. That's not ideal. There's potential for thunderous activity, which is not shown in the grids. Okay. So here we go, max gust. Yep. So then it's down to here. We've basically got percentage upwind. Well, no one likes going upwind. We've got percentage reaching. We've got percentage downwind, right? So I'm looking for numbers here. I want to see reaching and downwind. I want to see percentage of time I don't want to see any percentages of 30, 40 knots, really. I don't really want to be sailing in 40 knots of breeze. So it really gives me some wave data there too. So this is an executive summary. This is a summary view. If I click here, I get a detailed analysis of all those different models. But what I'd be doing is just running with this, right? So what it's telling me is probably, let's pick a day. What's the best day? For me, none of those days are any good, right? So basically none of those days are any good. You'd set a date in the future, okay, and run it again. So once you've done that and you've established what day you're going to head out, right, you basically want to get back into the weather routing because that gives you all that sort of finer detail. I'm back in here. So basically I've decided next Thursday, this coming Thursday is the time to leave. I'm going to be planning my departure based on the weather routing. I'm using the departure planning as an executive summary overview. I'm using the weather routing as the real deal, right? So I'm heading up here. I'm actually changing my start time, right? So I'm going to choose, we never leave on a Friday, do we? I tend to sometimes, but here we go. Let's do Saturday coming up. Let's leave it at that, and I will run the routing. So the departure planning has told me Saturday's the best time to go. I'm running the routing for this. Okay. What I can do, of course, is I can then refine that time of the day I'm potentially going. Okay. Mindful of good seamanship. When I've cleared customs and I'm off, I want to actually have some daylight for the team. I don't want to be straight into an hour of daylight, then into a night watch. So I'll let this run again, and then we'll go through the detail. It literally is doing thousands or millions of calculations here to get this routing in. Here we go. Right, we're on the money. So I'm back here with the routing. Now I don't spend too long here. I'm quite happy to play it forward. Like I can see there's a lot of breeze there. You probably wouldn't go, but I'm just giving you an example here. But generally, I'm in here, and then I'm into the tables. So the tables is absolutely game-changing, in my opinion. Like we're giving you routing, like a 1,200 nautical mile route, you probably know how to get there. You follow your nose, right? But this is giving you a whole lot of detail that you just cannot see in wind maps. You just cannot, and you just don't get this detail. So I always go to graphs first. I have a look at how the models are aligning. Right now, this is not a great route. They're not aligning. I've got that's true wind speed. I've got true wind direction. I've got true wind angle. So that's the wind angle relative to your boat. And I've got some other parameters here. I've got rain. Now, why is that important to me? Because if I'm seeing rain and high Cape values here, then there's potential for some thunderous activity, which no grid or wind map's going to show you that thunderous activity. Okay, so that's about good watch keeping at night, or during the day, I should say, for those thunderous activity. It's potentially the radar on, if you've got a radar, to see that sort of those clouds coming in and trying to avoid it. So we've got Cape, and anything for me over 1,500 is sort of it's worth having a look at, right? It really depends where you are in the world. Maybe in the tropics, it's a slightly higher elevation that would bring thunderous activity. As you can see, I'm heading to Fiji. It's 28 degrees. It's getting warmer. I've got the barometer here. But the big kicker for me, and I use this all the time for departure planning, is this here, wave height. We've got wave direction. I've got the period. I mean, the period makes a big deal, but down here, there's a bit of current direction is here, this thing called roll, right? This is not made up. I've sort of validated this a fair bit in the last 2 or 3 years. And what I can say is anything over 4 is really uncomfortable, right? This is actually not cool at all. This is really high. I would not be going. All these values are above 4. I want to see it 3 and less, pretty much. Okay. Coming back from Fiji last year, where there was a bit of a low pressure which had built, and it was a very confused sea state, which was way out to the east of us, and that was having a massive impact on the conditions that we were seeing. And we had, even at 3.5 and 4, it was sort of, guys were sort of seasick. It was hard to get it move around the boat. So this goes hand in hand with this other one here, which is vertical acceleration. I'll just go back to this roll. Don't get too caught up. It's not 4% roll. It's the root mean squared. Don't worry about how that's worked out. Just have a look at this. If it's above 4 or even 3.5, it's going to be pretty uncomfortable to get around the boat. Difficult, okay? Unsafe. There's some wording there. So the vertical acceleration, anything over 0.2, it's problematic, okay? 0.2, I've got massive elevation here. So what does that say to me? If I was actually crossing the Atlantic, where it's 15 to 20 days or 30 days at sea, whatever it could take. So there's periods of time that you're going to have to be, vigilant here. So basically it could be seasick tablets into the crew. Some of the crew get seasick. If the boat's sort of a mess with fishing gear and the tender's been moving around, you want to basically, relash it. All those things is good seamanship to get you through that period, right? Now this here, I've got slamming incidents here. So this is basically meaning there's probably quite a lot of upwind work in that passage. And as it says here, 50% slamming or greater may lead to hull damage or crew injuries. Okay, so this stuff's actually real, and I've validated it. And I use this all the time to plan getting off the dock. Okay, so from there, I mean, this is an incredibly bad route, but we'll just work through it anyway. So once again, we're back in here. So how I use this is you've got all those models and we're giving you a route. The route, we're not giving you a yellow brick road to follow, right? So what I'm doing is I've run the routing. We're offshore now. We're into this thing. I put a waypoint in the chart plotter. It might be 6 hours up the track. It might be 12 hours up the track. It might be we're looking through here, right? So I'm looking through here and I've decided that right now, based on my onboard conditions I have, the ECMWF is doing the better job, right? So I'm having a look through the tables here, right? I'm having a look at the tables and I'm seeing potentially here, or exactly here, there's a jibe coming up, right? Now, we want to sort of prep for that. I'm looking at when that is. That's 6 in the morning. It's probably at a watch change. We know it's going to be daylight. So if that comes true, that'll probably be a waypoint I'll put in. And at a watch change, when we've got potentially, at least 4 people on deck, we might set up for that jibe and we might pull that jibe off then. Okay, so use these tables as sort of like as you go down the route of events, and you can just see how there's a jibe there. There's periods when I'm motoring here because it's very light. So just really dig into this stuff. So when I talk about validating the model, it's about what you're seeing. I mean, you're out there doing it, right? You've got eyes and you can see the wave state. You've got wind gear, hopefully, and you've got the true wind speed. You're seeing the gust. You're seeing the true wind direction and how that's changing. So it's really important that you're engaged with these wind tables. And I'm always in here having a good look. This summary here, great tool. It's given me sort of exactly like what we're seeing in the departure planning. We're having a pretty good look at the overall. So, we've got max wind speed. It's pretty much the same stuff, right? Route is a whole bunch of waypoints. Basically, at every part on that route for each different model. I don't spend much time in here. We've got some wave data. If you're really into sort of a detailed analysis of, we've got, because all those parameters before are exactly this. We've got combined wind and wave. We've got wind wave, primary, secondary, tertiary, and I've got those roll values out here as well. We're also giving you on that route warnings. which here it's telling me there's all this roll. So there's lots of indicators in here, if you're using it properly, of periods of time, which it could get, especially on a long passage, a little bit different potentially on a 7 or 8 day passage, 10-day passage, but crossing the Atlantic, or say going from Auckland to Panama in summer, where it could be 40 days at sea, you're going to get periods where you've got to adjust, right? So this is where you'll be sort of looking at it. There's current data, there's atmosphere. I like to spend a bit of time in here because it's given me once again, a bit of an overview. So I've got pressure, temperature, rain, cape, fog, lightning, and once again, I've got these warnings. Okay, so that's pretty much how I do it. Now, what you're going to be doing at sea is, we've got this map. We've got the zoom controls. Great stuff. So basically at sea, I'll be moving the green. The green will be moving to where I am, right? So I'll move the green up and I'll run the weather routing again from my new start position. Okay, so basically I won't be using this tool though, okay, just to be fair, because what's happening here is you could use this on Starlink, because I'm on the website, right? I came into the website. So what I'll be using is actually the Offshore app. Okay, it's very similar to this, but what it's doing is actually saving all the data in offline mode. So why is that good? Basically for that exact reason. Like you might not be using your Starlink the whole time. Definitely be using the Offshore app with Iridium Go or Iridium Go Exec, or a 9555, 975 with a optimizer, whatever how you set up, you're probably going to be using the Offshore app. So should we see if we can share that, Nick? How do we do that? So I'll stop sharing and let's go into that. Right. Can we see that? Guess we can. Right. I'm in the Offshore app. How are we going for time? Better hurry up a bit, eh? So I'm in the Offshore app. So I'd be using this. So we've talked about, and it's no different. The output's exactly the same, right? So I'm now into the Offshore app. What we want to do here is we want to use this before we head out as well. We want to get used to this tool. It's no point trying to learn this if your Starlink's gone down, right? So basically, weather routing, I've got my start and finish waypoint. I'm into doing the download. Basically, here I am. Download method for me is web. I've got these other things here, Iridium Go Exec, whatever I've got going on. I'm basically going to be choosing the gribs, gribs are just low bandwidth. They're basically set up for low bandwidth. They're compressed files, right? So basically we're looking at a grib. We're basically 24, 12 hourly. At sea, I'm at sea. If I was doing my weather routing through this tool and I'm looking at departing, I'll be doing 10 days. But if I'm at sea, it's realistically 3 days. I know it's 7 days there, guys, but I'm going to do 3 days. I'm going to do 50 or 100K resolution because I'm using the grib or the weather map as the general view. I'm not getting too carried away with it. With what the weather routing's doing, it's using the high resolution data set. So for PWE, for example, or PWG, where we've got that high resolution 1 kilometer stuff, it'll be using it at the start. It'll be rolling into all the other resolutions, okay, until it gets to the other end, where it'll be using 1K again. And that's the same for the other models. ECMWF will be 9K. The GFS will be 27, but where you're in areas where you've got high resolution modeling, like in the US, where it'll be using the NAM model and then going into the GFS. Same in Europe, it'll be using the AROME and then it'll be going to ECMWF. But you don't have to worry about that. It's just the best data sets available. All you'll be doing is choosing the ECMWF. But the front end of that for the first part will be the AROME model. Okay. So here we are. I've got 12 hourly, 3 days, 100 resolution. We've already done 150 miles. I've moved my green up the line. I'm just going to bring in these top 4. I'm not going to bring in these others because I want to keep my file size down here. See, this is 117 KB. Basically, with an Iridium Go, you want to be down around the 150. With an exec, you probably want to be no more than sort of 500 KB. There's no real reason to be any greater than that. I can get a big weather map, right, for that sort of, or big grid for that sort of size. So I'm always wind and pressure. I'm not too worried about the other parameters because that's all in the weather routing results anyway. So start time is now, weather routing. I'm going to bring in this thing called the GMDSS. Okay, so it's a text-based forecast. The world's broken up into met areas. It helps you validate what you're seeing, and it doesn't talk about its lovely sunny weather. It's going to talk about a low pressure, potentially a tropical disturbance. There could be whatever it might be. It'll be talking about that. So it might talk about a low. It's where its center is and where it's moving, right? Now, what we've done at PredictWind, we've taken it a step further. We've doing a graphical representation of that GMDSS. So you can see it easy, right? So I've got those two ticked. Then it's next, and I'm into it. I don't bring in the ocean data because that's the weather routing's using it anyway. It's using the tidal components, using the Mercator or whatever you've chosen, and I would recommend that one, Mercator, Mercator, however you say it. I find on average that does the better job. Okay, so ocean data, I've got that turned off. I've got my GPS tracking turned on. I've got the AIS data. Let's turn that on. What that is, that's from my green waypoint. That's all AIS targets, 300 nautical miles around that green target. It's giving me some heads up what's out there for that. I've got my AIS on board, but I want to potentially see further out just for ships or fishing fleets, all that sort of thing. It's pretty much, you can do it two ways. With PredictWind, you can do it through here, the Offshore App, or you can have it sort of live with OHA through the data hub, right, which can show on your chart plotter. It's the same sort of thing. So I've got it clicked here, selected here, next, and I'm into it. So I'm downloading all. So as you can see, it's doing its thing. You can see the weather routing. Once again, it's doing its thing. It's got to send all that data set back to the cloud. You can see as these roll in, obviously I'm using a Mac right now. So Mac and PC, you can see the update times rolling through here. So you can see that these are coming in. You want to stay on this page till they're all in. Don't go and do something else or get off this page. Let them all roll in. Now with this, like if you're using a low bandwidth solution, you want to basically, which is an Iridium Go or Go Exec, you want to do this when you've got 4 or 5 bars of signal strength. The Iridium Go, for example, if you're down to 3 or 4, 4 is actually 50% speed. If you've got full 5 bars, 150 KB, it will take 15 minutes to drag in. So we've got to sort of hurry up and wait. So if I'm not getting signal strength for some reason, doesn't happen very often, I'll just go and make a cup of coffee and come back, right? Come back to this. So we're still downloading here. Here we go. Right, she's in. Close. Right, so I'm looking at exactly the same stuff. And, I tend to, once I said, it's the same as the website. So graph, wind, summary, route, no different, right? Exactly the same. Right. So now we're into the map, which is the grid. Now with the grids, so I've gone to grid. See, I've done that. I've gone from weather routing. It's landed on the weather routing. I've gone to grid. Now for me, that's not acceptable, right? So what I should have done when I came in here is gone to grid, and I would have moved my white box out because I want to see, especially if I'm, like if I was up here, sure, I want to drag it to here, but I want to see what's going on. So I drag my white box further out. So next time I do the download, that pretty picture will land in that white box. So with the Offshore App, you can control the size of your grid, right? And why is that important? Because we don't want to ring fence things, right? We want to go as big as we can. And that's one of the reasons we drop off some of the other models, because we're not missing out on that data set because it's in the weather routing results. But to get the general synoptic overview, just 1 or 2 gribs, different models are just fine, right? So I'm on the weather routing. I've brought in the GMDSS, and I've brought in, and it's popping up stuff, right? So here I am. What is this? Thunderstorms, like there's all over this route. There's we've got the GMDSS, we've got, we're showing there's frontal bands, there's troughs, there's all those sort of things which are showing here. So, this is why we like to bring in the GMDSS, because it actually helps you on I guess, a bigger scale. See, I've just zoomed out. Even though I didn't bring in the grib area, it's telling me, there's some features, and that feature could have been here, right? Which is not ideal, but I would have missed out on that with just a smaller grib. So it's sort of really important to bring in the GMDSS. You can see here when I hit GMDSS that this is the full text base, but you can see what met area. You can see you can see the world's broken up into these met areas. So basically, for this region here, Fiji Met Office and New Zealand Met Office are responsible for this massive area. And over here, there's a line, and the Australians will be looking after this area here. So that's important, right? Now let's go back to the weather routing. Let's move these zoom controls. Let's go and have a look in here. So once again, let's go and turn on the AIS. Right, you can see that I've just turned that off. So I can turn this GMDSS off here, get rid of it, sick of looking at it. I can then look at the different, I brought in wind, I haven't brought in rain, so I won't see it. So if you ever think I'm not seeing it, it's because you haven't actually downloaded it, right? So I can see all these targets here. I didn't move my, there you go. So I'm still here, but you can see I've got all this data set out here. Look, there's a ship here, this sort of thing. So why that's important, you often get it, if you're going from, if you're going from anywhere up Newport, Rhode Island, if you're doing that passage up through the Gulf Stream, when you're getting, say, Bahamas up to Newport, Rhode Island, as you get sort of off Cape Hatteras there, further north, you're getting into shipping lanes, all that sort of thing. So this is where this is sort of important, so you can sort of monitor that. Right, sort of running out of time here, but let's keep moving on. So like I say, this is exactly the same information as the website. So it's all about that heads up play. Basically with any offshore passage, it's about being prepared, but it's also about that playbook, right? So it's about periods of time where you should be reefing, look through those wind tables. If you're seeing there's an area of, look, we've got some thunderous activity, we probably want to put that reef in at night. So how do we do that? You want to, when it's light weather, practice putting a reef in and make sure everyone's in those same spots. So it's developing a playbook for that, for reefing. Let's do that, Let's think about if the mainsail's got 3 reefs, but you only provisioned in the boom for 2 reefs, is that maybe you could, before you're leaving, obviously 4 or 5 months out, think about how I could already have that 3rd reef in, but maybe the outhaul, I get rid of the outhaul, and maybe the mainsail's sort of more lashed on the outhaul, and I've got 3 reefs. Just be systematic with that. Have that playbook. It shouldn't really be a mystery, all that stuff. We don't want to be, scampering around at night trying to put reefs in. We want to be reefing potentially in the back of the boat. We want to reef the main early because we always can roll a jib in, right, at night. But we can't put a reef in at night. It's difficult. So all that good seamanship stuff. So for me on the boat, I basically don't have, we wear life jacket. We would put a life jacket on. We have a harness on. If you're hand steering, you've basically, you're clipped on. No one goes out of the cockpit at night. If you're on watch on your own for a period of time, you've got a watch system. You want to stick to that watch system. Maybe it's a rotating thing where you've got, maybe 3 hours at night's enough. You might be on for 1 hour, but you've got 2 people at either side of you so that you're never sort of on your own for too long. You would never go and get out of the cockpit on your own and go and try and fix something. I've done that before and wonder why I did it on a delivery 20 odd years ago. A bit silly to do that. So basically just have that spotter, all those good seamanship things, right? So the crew, let's not just stick on autopilot the whole time, guys. Let's think about what happens if the autopilot gives up, like you need to be able to hand steer, right? Especially in a sea state, you need to be able to hand steer. So why not practice that stuff? So just practice all that stuff. Nighttime watch, what's being on watch. Watch isn't watching Netflix on Starlink. Watch is actually getting out from under the bimini, having a look at the horizon from time to time, having a look at just looking for targets on the chart plot of AIS isn't really good enough. You got to, the best thing on the boat is your eyeballs most of the time. So you want to be having a look at the horizon and just seeing if you can see in every 20 minutes, have a look, having a feel for the boat, how it's performing, how, yeah, he did tell me, he did say it was actually going to, the breeze was going to build, are you in tune with that? Or you're on your WhatsApp, that's not good enough in my opinion. So we don't do that. We basically are off all those sort of things. So being on watch is on watch. It's not watching Netflix. Okay. So I find that's quite a big thing. What also I like to do is prep early. So prep early for landfall, right? So for me, for landfall, if I'm coming into I haven't been there before, and if I have, I've really prepped. So basically, it's about potential screenshots of maybe the leads. Maybe I've already got I've got a hand bearing compass at all time. I take a redundancy kit with me. So basically, my redundancy kit is my hand bearing compass. It's a handheld GPS, which is just AA batteries. It's I've got a paper chart of the destination of all things. Yeah, call me old school. And I've had to use that a fair bit. So I have a handheld GPS. I have a hand bearing compass. I just take my Iridium Go. I've got an Iridium Go, which I always take. I don't care if the boat's got Starlink Go execs itself. If I'm jumping on to do a mission, I'll just take my gear, which I know how to use, and I know it's a backup. Okay. So think about backups. Like, it's not saying that you need to have a Starlink, a Go exec, a Iridium Go, a Garmin inReach, but you decide where you want to sit in that. I know what I like to do. The boat that I take up to Fiji each year there and back, it's got Starlink, it's got an installed Go exec. Because I'm with PredictWind, I can take another Go exec. I've got my Iridium Go. So basically, you feel comfortable with what you've got, right? You're not going to get weather with the Garmin inReach, but you can't phone a friend, but you could text a friend. And I've been caught in that situation before. I've had to basically, with the backup was a 9555, and I had a backup plan to call a very experienced sailor friend of mine, and I would just say to him, tell me, is the weather the same as what it was 2 days ago, which I was seeing? Because all I had was weather, which was 2 days old, right? And then he goes to me, are you listening? Because it was actually a storm had developed, and he sort of gave me some really good guidance on that. So there's nothing worse than being blind on the weather. Okay. The first thing that people always ask me is as soon as we've done a download of weather, everyone wants to know what the weather is, right? So it's really important. Now, with the models, we talk about model bias. If you're going to be biased on any models, you really want to be looking at the high resolution stuff, especially towards the end of a leg. I'll give you an example. Last year, coming back from Fiji, where we were like 90 true the whole time. So we were reaching. What it did say, PWE, PWG models, because that high resolution 1K stuff, that the breeze was going to go forward. So we didn't want to be sort of having to tack down the coast. So we took that information, and then we sailed quite a lot higher than we were planning on doing. And it went forward, and we ended up having to do a short hitch off Cape Brett to come out of there. But that was all to do that for that high resolution models, right? So dig into that stuff. Going up to Fiji, where we one year people going, oh, I didn't expect it to go from trade southeast to into the north. Well, the high resolution models had that anomaly. So if you were just relying on your model bias, which is maybe GFS, you wouldn't have seen that. Okay, so it's all there for a reason. Okay, high resolution, you can't beat it. It's all in these wind tables here, right? So this is why I'm not too concerned about looking at the map. I don't that's okay. That PWG model there, or the ECMWF, I downloaded 100K resolution, because in the middle of the ocean here, resolution's not going to matter so much. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's when you get close to land where you have that sort of what we call 1K resolution. It's because it's it's the thermal effect, it's topography, all those things which can change the breeze, right? So that's what we'd want to be doing, looking at this data set here. This is, you want to live in here, right? Right, going on a bit now. So yeah, so I was talking about landfall. So landfall, covered it a bit, I guess. You want to make sure I always go through a reef pass it in the daytime. I will stall the boat out a wee bit. If there's periods of time where we want to go, we like to fish. If we see a sea mount, I might head for that. I might kill some time in that last day, so we're not just hanging around at a reef pass, right? My waypoints that I put in, I always were safe harbor waypoints. They're very much well offshore. I can always crib in, right? But I can't get sea room. So for me, it's about sea room. So basically, what I find, people even hand steering boats, if there's like sea lights in the distance, they aim for them. So you end up always fighting to get offshore, not onshore. So I always have a safe waypoint, and we run the boat like that, right? Right. How are we going for time, Nick? We've got 5 more minutes. So I haven't probably covered off everything I wanted to talk about. I basically got a checklist which I use.
Do you want me to, if you stop sharing, I
Yep.
can put your checklist on the screen if you'd like, and
Okay.
we can talk
Right.
through that.
Let's do.
And there's been lots of questions, like there's been over, I think, around 120 questions. And so I'll cover off a couple of those, but let's put your checklist up.
Right.
And I'll leave you to talk to that. You can see that.
Can everyone see that?
I can see it.
You can see it.
Yep.
Right.
Can you see that?
It doesn't matter. I've got it here. Anyway. Yeah. So okay, guys, here we go. Look at Nick. He's done this fantastic little thing for me here. Offshore checklist. Right. Now I'll just sort of read to it a wee bit. So like I said, I have my redundancy kits, my handheld GPS. We've gone over that. Now, these are the checks that I do. Like, generally, I won't take on an assignment if the boat's not prepared to a very high level. I'm just not really interested in that. So, but I do my checks when I get to it. Not that I'm not trusting anyone, but I want to know the boat inside out, right? So for me, it's the engine. Let's check the oil, all those things. Let's check the engine mount. So I've had a boat where on a delivery where it's been coming off the engine mount. So I generally check the engine mounts, and I think about redundancy on that. If I did actually come off the engine mounts, how I would actually shore those up again, right? Fuel filters, really important, like, because you've been hanging around, the diesel tanks but you might have diesel bug, you might have, basically, with the boat moving around, you could easily pick something up. So basically check the ray cores, just have spare fuel filters. Is the engine easy to bleed? I have a Perkins 4236 on my boat. That's not easy to bleed, right? So that's a nightmare. So I've got manuals for that, for anyone else that buys my boat can read that. I go through the steering components, right? I want to see visually where on the cables. I want to see how the autopilot's to the quadrant. Do we have spare steering cables? Do we have dynamometer to make new ones? All those little things at the heat of the moment. I want to have ready to go, right? A boat diagram, right? So the schematic of the boat, where are the seacocks, fire extinguishers? Where are these located? Where's that hidden fuse? There could be this hidden fuse somewhere on your electrical system that no one knows about. So if you've got this up, you've printed it out, it's laminated, everyone can see it, everyone can get used to the boat. Rig check. I mean, we're not professional riggers, but I'll pull one of my key men up the rig and he'll do a rig check right before we go. The boom preventer, we want to have a boom preventer. We don't want to get this thing flying around. The boom can be the most dangerous thing on a boat, as we all know. So the preventer's already on the boom at the back end. It's already out there, and the front end's at the gooseneck. So it's easy to get to. I'm not thinking at sea, oh, I need to get a preventer on. I've got to put someone in a bosun's chair and get them out to the end of the boom. It's already on, right? Water on, just those simple checks. Food on, spare emergency water. That first night at sea is always difficult. I don't care if you've done 200,000 miles, whatever you've done it doesn't really matter. That first night is hard at sea, right? So make that first night's meal easy. It's pre-prepared. Gas bottles filled. Charts. So we got charts. I've been on a boat before where we thought we had the charts. No one checked the charts. We get there and it's like a kid had drawn a diagram. It's like a crayon drawing. It was hopeless. So my backup stuff saved the day there, right? So we should have checked that. But you get so busy because running a boat's like running a small village, right? You've got so many moving parts. Barometer, totally important. If you haven't got a barometer, go and buy one, right? And I'm not talking some sort of souvenir one. Make sure it's good quality. Basically, it helps you validate what you're seeing in those scribs or those weather maps, right? So basically, barometer, I'll be looking at that pre-departure. It's a key. Often I'll take a barometer. If a boat hasn't got a barometer, I used to take a barometer in my sort of redundancy kit, right? Q flag, courtesy flag for the country coming in on. Communication check. VHF, Iridium. Is your tracking working? Don't forget to share your tracking URL from PredictWind if you've got set up a tracking page. It's a safety feature. Okay. You actually making a blog post on that tracking page is actually telling someone at shore that you're still there, right? That's simple as that. Logbook. Now, logbook. Why do we have a logbook? You got to have a logbook because basically I want to know where we are. So in that logbook, it's obviously date, time stamped. I have it basically position, and I'll have basically everything else in there. So it could be anything to do with the engine. It could be, what RPM we've been running at. Where does the oil pressure sit? All those sort of things. So we've got some reference point, right? So we talk about the breeze. It's southwest 20 to 25. Barometer's 1,010. What course have we been averaging, right? So if we've been hand steering for 2 hours, I don't want to know we've been steering 350, which is a figment of your imagination. I want to know potentially what you've course average for 2 hours. So that will go in there, right? So we've basically got this logbook, really important. First aid, like with boats have massive first aid boxes, right? Which are full of everything to save the day. Break that down, just have a little day kit. Same with your tools. You've got all your tools. Just have a little day bag. Okay. I always get on a boat, any boat doing an offshore passage, the lifelines, right? So massively important that you tape up Pelican, those little where you've got your gates. I like to tape those up. Often I see those coming open. It's not cool. Check the lashings, check the shackles, check every little thing you can on those things, right? Jack lines, contentious issue here. Like jack lines should not, for me, they should be, down the center, especially up, you don't want to be dragged. You want to stay on the boat, right? So you don't want to be dragged through the water on a harness tether. You want to be, so where you can, like a professional bowman in a race team, he will have a Laracus on or a very short harness, so he's locked in, And that's what you want to think about here is if you've got a jack line, which is a line running all the length of the boat, or you've got to unhook from one to hook to another, that you've got two tethers, make sure that it's a really short tether. You don't want to be going over the lifelines, right? You want to stay on the boat. And that sort of brings me into, I guess, you want to have your man overboard sorted, how you're going to control that, your abandoned ship, have a playbook for all these things and talk to the crew. They really need to know this stuff. So if someone did go over the side, what's the first thing you do? Probably push the man overboard on your chart plotter, right? Potentially. He's got a life jacket on. Maybe he's got a PLB. Not sure how you're going to run it, but you need to think about that. Then how you're going to get that person back on board. So it's basically a playbook for any situation. Because if you're playing for it, it's probably not going to happen, right? Life raft in service. How do you deploy that life raft? We want to get that deployed in less than a minute, right? So let's not see it in a locker underneath the your stand-up paddleboard. It needs to be ready to go. EPIRB, test it, batteries and date. Grab bag, important, right? Batteries, no point having a 9555, 975 Iridium in there if the batteries are flat. Let's test it. Do we know how to use it? Passports go in the grab bag. Systems check. It's all very well being in the marina, me on shore power, spend the night on the boat, offshore power. How do the batteries hold up? How are we going to manage that battery bank at sea? When are we going to do the charging protocol? When do we start the generator, or how are we going to do this? Are we relying on solar? Are we relying on the alternator on the motor? What are we going to do? Instrumentation, big deal. Night mode, once again. Like what I used to say is that all these chart plotters that should get sold with a tea towel, right? Or some cloth that you can hang over them because they're always too bright. So make sure you're happy with your night mode. Okay. Compass light. If you've got a binnacle compass, you need a red light. It needs a red light. All boats should have a proper compass, in my opinion. Nav lights, work, backup. So that's pretty much my sort of I guess my little list I work through. So yeah. Am I waffling on here, Nick, or you?
No, I think I mean that was really good to go through that stuff, and we have put that into the help article that'll go with this webinar. I've sort of looked at some of the questions and on our way through the webinar, and I'll just answer some questions around that.
Yeah.
There were some questions around the currents in the routing. So yes, all of our weather routing, departure planning uses the currents, whether you're on a standard or a pro sub, and it'll use the high resolution tidal currents where they're applicable, and then it'll go into the ocean currents and is using them at all stages through your route, as is it's using for your wave output stuff. People asked about setting that up, the wave polars. Yes, you do need to put your boat parameters in there so that we can do that sort of basic modeling of the boat to then model it as it goes through the route. And that sort of leads into another thing that Smilie touched on. Someone was asking about fastest time versus comfort. So I know both Smilie and I will always talk about using the fastest time, and we're not necessarily racing our boat everywhere, but the fastest time's always giving us the best route to get there with the wind. But then we'll use our seamanship. If there's something in front of us that we don't like, we'll use our seamanship to make that decision. We might slow down, we might speed up, we might, put a waypoint in and completely change our course. Um, uh, it's not always clear that, but all the way through the route, we're always updating our start point to where we are and running new routes every 12 hours at least. You wouldn't want to do longer than that. The sort of the difference between also currents, we can see the currents, we can see all the currents, and Smilie didn't download them in the Offshore app, but you can download those before you leave if you're on a low bandwidth connection. And so they'll still be there in the Offshore app. You can see those currents. and sort of there were some questions around the Offshore app versus the web version. So depending on your connection type, you would use the Offshore app. If you've got a, well, I would offshore, I'd use the Offshore app the whole time. But you can use the web version if you're on a Starlink connection. Basically, any other low bandwidth connection, you'll be using the Offshore app. I'd use it the whole time anyway because it saves everything offline. Um, there were some questions around routing. So when we see the split in the routes, um, what we will do if you see the routes diverging. I mean, obviously that means that there's uncertainty in the weather models. Um, how we deal with that is what you'll see is often in the short term they are in alignment. So we'll just keep running our routing every 12 hours, looking for that consensus between the models. And as time goes on, you'll see you want to go through and work out what the reasons are that they're diverging. Is it a system? Is it just light winds and the router trying to find its way through fastest? Um, so there are ways to look at that and understand the differences in the models. And then one other question that I sort of saw there that I thought that would make really clear is that someone said, "Oh, this looks like it's just all for offshore stuff. I'm in the mid." Um, you can use this if you are going for a 4 hour trip. Even the departure planning. Is it better to leave this morning or this afternoon? Um, you can get into a fair amount of trouble on a short trip, probably even more than an offshore trip in some respects, because you're probably not as prepared. You haven't put as much thought into it. So definitely use it for short-term routes, whether it's, 50 miles, 60 miles. Um, run a route because you might see things that you wouldn't necessarily pick up just looking at a weather map. We have all the warnings in there to let things that you may not pick up um, ordinarily, just looking at maps. So definitely use it short-term routes. If you're powerboating, use it. The short-term routes are amazing for looking at a time when you can not get too knocked around. So they're the main things from the questions. We will send out the Q&A, the commonly asked questions. And if you do have any further questions, please come into support at predictwind.com, and ask questions if you feel that you're a newbie and maybe there's been some stuff that was too fast or too complicated. Come and ask questions. We'll help you. That's what the support team's there for. Um, so yeah, but anyway, with that, we will send the recording of this out. I want to thank um, Smilie for taking this on. Yeah, and then just a quick thing around that sort of help. We do onboardings with people, so you can come in and book one of those with our support team, but they are there to help. So just ask the questions. Um, yeah, I think we'll just wrap it up there, and thank you everyone for coming along and listening, and yeah, take care out there.